Today we're going to plant pumpkins and gourds. Pumpkins and gourds are really heavy feeders, so they're going to need some compost. And they'll also need some fertilizer. You could use a 5-10-10 or a 10-20-20 fertilizer. And those are basically your major macronutrients. So nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium in that order are what the numbers stand for on the bag. Nitrogen helps things grow. You don't need a ton of that, or else you're going to get just huge, crazy vines and not a lot of fruit. Phosphorus helps with root development, and potassium helps with all-around strength and health, so those are more important when it comes to pumpkins. You're also going to need compost. And if you have chickens, or if you know someone that has chickens, their manure makes a really good compost. And you can actually buy it at the store too, which is kind of expensive, so if you have your own or if you know someone with them, definitely go that route if you can. I have a little hack where I put cardboard boxes under their roosts, because when they sleep in here at night, they spend basically their whole day out here unless they go in here to lay an egg. But at night, when they roost, they're going to go to the bathroom, of course. So I put some cardboard boxes under the roost, which is a really nice hack that helps keep your coop clean. Makes it a lot quicker to clean. I have a video on that, actually, a bunch of different chicken keeping hacks, so check that out. But you can see it drops right into here, so when it's time to clean the coop, I just remove this, and then I don't have to use as much bedding. And it's really good for cases like this, because I can just scoop some up in here and carry it up to the garden with me to use as fresh compost. Now, in a lot of cases, aged compost works best, but since I'm doing these from seeds, and since I've done this before with success, I'm not too worried about this being fresh. They're all trying to help. Believe it or not, I'm actually allergic to birds, so I try not to go in here too often. The coop, that is. I'm usually fine when I'm out here in the open with them. So I'm going to be honest with you, the best way to grow pumpkins is directly in the ground. They don't do well in containers. I have seen cases where some people will get a bag of soil and they'll cut it open and plant like one seed in it and let it grow, and it has worked for some people, but you really have to keep it well fed and well watered. And technically you could do it in a very large grow bag the same way, but the results are really going to be the best in the ground for something like this. Because like I said, they're very heavy feeders and their vines get huge if they're fed properly. If you're not getting big vines, then you need more space, more water, and more nutrients. However, there are a few varieties of gourds and pumpkins that grow more like a bush. So if you have limited space, look into that, because there are so many different varieties. The fact that there's so many varieties, it's a lot of fun, but it also makes it really difficult for me because there's so many that I like, but I don't have a ton of space, so it's so hard to decide each year which ones to grow and which ones not to. If I find varieties that I really like, I will do them each year, but I also like to try new stuff. But this is what I've done the past few years, and each year I'll take some of my best looking pumpkins and I'll save the seeds from it and replant it. These are secretariats. It's an orange small pumpkin, kind of like a spooky pumpkin, the kind that doesn't get too big. But I like these because the vines produced a lot. They were pretty disease resistant, and the pumpkins just looked really nice. They had a nice stem. Porcelain Princess was a really nice one. It's kind of like a squatty, like semi-flat one, so it's good for stacking. It's a really, really pretty shade of pink. And the vines of this plant are a little bit more tolerant and resistant towards powdery mildew, which most vine crops will get, especially if you live in a humid area. And powdery mildew will eventually slowly kill your plant, so if you can find ones that are more strong against that, you should go for that. And I like daisy gourds just because they're cute and there's so many different looking ones. And you can get a ton of these off of just one vine alone. But keep in mind, one vine is like one seed, which will make one vine obviously, will only produce one type of gourd. Like, they're all daisy gourds, but you can see there's different looking ones. So if you want to try to get the different looks, the different colors, plant multiple seeds of this so you can have a variety, because each vine will just produce the one color. I hope this one was cool looking. These are always fun, and technically they're edible. So are the Porcelain Princess. I mean, technically you could probably eat any pumpkin, but there's carving varieties, and they're, you probably know, they're more stringy and hollow inside because they were bred for carving. And then there's ones that were designed and bred for eating, and they're more fleshy inside. So this is one of those. This would be considered like a standard carving variety. This one's blue, and it is an edible one. And some more fun gourds. And it's good to make labels so that way when you do plant them, if some don't germinate and you have to replant, you'll know which ones you have to go back and redo. I'm going to be honest with you, it's kind of weird that pumpkins are one of my favorite things to grow because they're actually one of the more fragile things to grow. They're more high maintenance. They're very susceptible to many different kinds of disease and mildews and fungus. There's a lot of pests out there that want to mess them up. And I don't mean like rabbits and chipmunks. I mean there's a lot of bugs that are going to come and try to ruin your crop. One year I had vine borers in mine, and I could tell because the leaves were getting droopy on the vines, they were turning yellow. some of the plants were dying. And when I looked at like the stem, like the part that was coming out of the ground, the base of it, I could see all this frass coming out, which is insect poop. And I could see like little holes there. So that's when I knew that something had laid its eggs and the larvae had hatched, and they were literally burrowing through the inside of my vine, eating the plant alive. And believe it or not, I was actually able to save a couple of my plants. I had to cut into them with a knife, pull out the worms. It was disgusting. And then I took some wet mud and patched up the hole that I had to cut into the vine. And believe it or not, it survived. I did lose a few though, very sad. And if you ever see it, it's like I might have a video of it actually, I'll insert that if I do, but it's like a red and black flying insect, and if you see that laying eggs on your pumpkin, you know you're in trouble. Breaking news, code red emergency. Look what I spotted. This is wart. So if you find that, your vines will have tons of leaves on them. You can cut off some leaves if you see eggs in it. Obviously not a lot of them because you don't want to stress the plant. But the best thing to do is prevention, because those aren't the only things that are going to be coming after your pumpkins. Cucumber beetles will, squash bugs, all kinds of things. It's not fun. So prevention, like I was saying, is the key. You can spray 7 on it on a regular basis before you even have any signs that anything's wrong. Because like I said, oftentimes when you do start to see signs that your plant is in trouble, it's too late. When you spray, you want to spray the entire vine, top to bottom, top of the leaves, bottom of the leaves, the base where it's growing directly out of the ground. You could use 7. If you want to use something organic, you could use neem oil. And neem oil claims that it also protects it against mildew and disease. I've used it before. It worked okay. But 7 worked a little bit better, but 7 will not protect against disease, so keep that in mind. This is another organic spray that works pretty well against bugs if you wanted to take the organic route. Now this one doesn't do too good for pumpkins, but this one actually does work pretty good on corn against worms, which surprised me because a lot of the organic stuff doesn't seem to work as well, but this one actually did against worms. And then here are 2 options to help protect your plants against mildews and fungus and disease. Honestly, like I said, if you live where the summers get really, really humid and if there's a lot of storms, then at some point, even if you use this, you are most likely going to get powdery mildew towards the end of the season. But you can prolong your season and try to make it towards the end so that they're ripe enough to be harvested by using things like this. And same with when you're spraying the insect repellent. If you're using something like this, you want to spray the entire plant top to bottom. In my experience, this one worked better against the mildew. This one was fairly good with disease. And you can see on there, it shows you what some of the different issues will look like on your plant if you see that. And on the back, you will find a little booklet of instructions on how to use them. Okay, now I'm gonna go get some scissors and then we're gonna walk up to the field where I'm gonna grow the pumpkins. So the ground's already tilled, and right before we tilled it, we put down fertilizer. I am gonna side dress it with a little bit more though. And I put down black fabric and black plastic to help keep the weeds away and also to help warm up the ground, because pumpkins like it warm. You can't plant them until all danger of frost is gone. So a lot of people plant theirs in like little hills or mounds, but I honestly just cut the hole. Dig it up, remove all the rocks. Put 2 to 3 seeds in there, and then obviously if they both germinate and sprout, you'll have to thin it because you can't have 2 out of the same little hole. That'll be way too much competition for them. Cover it back up. Put in some compost. And if you want, you can actually put compost like in the bottom of the hole too, and then again on top and around it. Side dress a little bit more fertilizer. Label it, and then keep going till we're done. Space your pumpkin plants about 2 to even 5 feet apart, depending on the variety. Because like I said earlier, they're heavy feeders, they're gonna get long bushy vines, and they need a lot of space to grow. If you have them all planted really close or on top of each other, they're not gonna do as well because they're gonna be competing with each other, and you're not gonna get as many pumpkins or as large of a pumpkin. If you want really, really large sized pumpkins and you don't care about how many you're actually yielding, first, obviously select a variety that is known to get large. And second, once they start blossoming and you see the little pumpkins appear, Select the largest one on the vine and pluck off all the others so that way the plant can put all of its energy into growing that one pumpkin really large. I've heard some people throughout the season will feed their pumpkin plants with some seaweed mix, Epsom salt, sometimes even milk, and calcium-rich compost to help with growth. Most pumpkins take about 7 to 10 days to germinate, so stay tuned so you can follow along and see how I care for the pumpkin plants throughout the summer. And then in a few months, once we get to the very end of summer, stay tuned to see the harvest. Don't forget to check out my other garden videos and follow along so you can see the rest of our pumpkin plant journey and learn even more about their care. And now here's a look back at some of the pumpkins and gourds that I've grown in years past.